The massive ship broke through the purple clouds of the alien world. Inside, Kang Tae-ho pressed his face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below him stretched an entire civilization that no human had ever seen before. Towers of crystal reached toward the sky. Rivers of silver light flowed between buildings. It was beautiful beyond words. "Stop drooling on the glass," said Park Yuna from behind him. She was his best friend and the communications officer for the mission. "You look like a tourist." "I am a tourist," Tae-ho replied with a nervous laugh. "I'm a xenobiologist. I study alien life. I never thought I would actually meet any." The ship carried 30 humans from Earth. They were the first diplomatic team ever sent to the Valari home world. The Valari had contacted Earth 6 months ago. They were a powerful empire, but controlled dozens of star systems. And now, humanity was about to shake hands with them for the first time. Tae-ho was not supposed to be important on this mission. He was just a scientist. His job was to observe, take notes, and stay quiet. The real talking would be done by Ambassador Kao, a serious woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had practiced her speech 100 times during the journey. The ship landed softly on a platform made of white stone. When the doors opened, Tae-ho felt warm air touch his face. It smelled like flowers and rain. Outside, hundreds of Valari waited in perfect lines. They were beautiful. That was the first thing Tae-ho noticed. They looked almost human, but taller and thinner. Their skin glowed softly with inner light, like moonlight trapped under glass. Their hair came in shades of silver, violet, and deep blue. Their eyes were large and filled with stars. At the center of the welcoming party stood the queen herself. Queen Lyra was the ruler of the entire Valari Empire. She wore a dress made of flowing light that changed colors as she moved. A crown of crystal flowers rested on her silver hair. She was the most magnificent being Tae-ho had ever seen. He suddenly felt very small and very plain in his simple Earth uniform. The ceremony began. Ambassador Kao walked forward to deliver humanity's formal greeting. But then something happened. A small drone carrying translation equipment flew too close to the Queen's guards. They reacted with alarm. In the confusion, the drone crashed into Ambassador Kao. She fell hard and hit her head on the stone floor. Everyone rushed to help her. She was alive, but unconscious. The ceremony could not continue without the greeting being delivered. It would be a terrible insult to the Queen. "Someone has to do it," whispered one of the officials. "Anyone, right now." Tae-ho felt a hand push him forward. He stumbled into the open space between the humans and the Valari. Every alien eye turned to look at him. His heart pounded. His mouth went dry. He had memorized the greeting speech, but only because he was bored during the long journey. He never expected to actually use it. He cleared his throat and began to speak in the Valari language. The words felt strange on his tongue. He had practiced the pronunciation, but he was not perfect. "Great Queen of the Valari," he said, his voice shaking. "Humanity comes to you with open hearts. We offer you our friendship. We offer you our knowledge. We offer you." He paused. What was the next word? His mind went blank with panic. He tried to remember. The word for partnership was difficult. It sounded similar to another word. He made his best guess. "We offer you our genetic material," he said. Silence fell over the crowd. Yuna's face went pale. She knew enough of the Valari language to understand what Tae-ho had just said. He had not offered partnership. He had offered something very, very different. In Valari culture, offering genetic material to the Queen was a proposal of the most intimate kind. The Queen's eyes widened. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. She stepped forward, her glowing dress trailing behind her like a river of stars. "The human offers himself," she announced to her people. "After 300 years, A suitor finally comes who may be compatible. I accept this gift." The Valari erupted in cheers. Te-Ho stood frozen. "Wait," he said. "I think there has been a mistake." Two tall guards gently took his arms. They were not rough, but they were firm. They began leading him toward the palace. "Yuna!" Te-Ho called out in panic. "Yuna, help me. Tell them I made an error." Yuna rushed forward, but more guards blocked her path. She argued with them desperately, trying to explain the translation mistake. But the Valari priests shook their heads. Their expressions were stern. "To retract such an offer is the greatest insult possible," one priest explained. "It would mean your entire species considers our queen unworthy. It would be an act of war." Yuna's heart sank. She looked at Te-Ho being led away. He looked back at her with terrified eyes. Inside the palace, everything was even more beautiful. The walls seemed to be made of frozen light. Soft music played from somewhere Te-Ho could not see. Servants in flowing robes bowed as he passed. He was taken to a large chamber and given new clothes made of silk that felt like water against his skin. A servant explained that he would rest tonight. Tomorrow, he would participate in the sacred bonding ritual with the queen. "Bonding ritual?" Te-Ho asked weakly. The servant smiled. "Yes, it is a great honor. No one has been deemed compatible with our queen for 400 years. Her scientists analyzed your genetic signature when you arrived. You are special." After the servant left, Te-Ho sat alone in the enormous room. He stared at the ceiling, which showed moving images of distant galaxies. How did this happen? He whispered to himself. "I just wanted to study aliens. I didn't want to marry one." But deep down, in a place he would not admit to, he remembered how beautiful the queen had looked. He remembered her smile. He remembered the hope in her eyes when she accepted his accidental offer. Whatever tomorrow brought, his life would never be the same. Back at the human ship, Yuna stood before the unconscious ambassador and the panicking officials. She took a deep breath. "We need a new plan," she said, "because I think my best friend just accidentally proposed to the most powerful woman in the galaxy." Te-Ho did not sleep that night. He lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling full of stars. His mind raced with worry. What was the bonding ritual? What would happen to him? Would he ever see Earth again? When morning came, servants entered his room. They brought him food that looked like glowing fruit and tasted like honey and sunshine. They dressed him in ceremonial robes of deep blue that matched the night sky. "You look handsome," said an old servant woman with kind eyes. "The queen will be pleased." Te-Ho tried to smile, but his face would not cooperate. "Can you tell me what will happen today?" The servant woman patted his hand gently. "The bonding ritual is a sacred ceremony. It connects two souls through the sharing of light. It is painless. It is beautiful. Do not be afraid." This calmed Te-Ho a little. At least it was not something terrible. He followed the servants through long hallways until they reached a massive door made of crystal. It opened slowly, revealing a circular room filled with soft golden light. Queen Lyra stood in the center. She wore a simple white dress today, without her crown. She looked less like a powerful ruler and more like a young woman. Te-Ho noticed she seemed nervous too. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her. Around them stood 12 priests in silver robes. They held glowing orbs that pulsed with soft light. Ancient symbols covered the floor beneath their feet. "Welcome," the head priest said. "Today we witness a bonding that has not occurred in 4 centuries. The union of the queen with a compatible soul." Te-Ho walked forward until he stood facing Lyra. Up close, he could see the light moving beneath her skin. Her eyes were the color of purple twilight. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. "I must apologize," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "I know this was not your intention." But when my scientists detected your genetic compatibility, I could not let the chance pass. My people are dying. Dying? Tejo whispered back. Lyra nodded sadly. Our bloodlines have grown weak over thousands of years. We cannot produce healthy children anymore. I am the last queen. Without an heir, my empire will fall into chaos when I am gone. She paused. You are the first being in 400 years whose genes can bond with mine. You might be our only hope. Tejo felt his fear transform into something else. This was not about politics or power. This was about a species trying to survive. As a scientist, he understood that desperate need. As a human being, he felt sympathy stir in his heart. What do I need to do? He asked. Relief washed over Lyra's face. Just follow the ritual. Open your heart. That is all. That is all. The ceremony began. The priests started singing in a language older than Tejo could imagine. The orbs in their hands grew brighter. Light began to swirl around the room like a gentle tornado. A golden chalice was brought forward. Inside it glowed a liquid that looked like captured starlight. The head priest explained that both Tejo and the queen would drink from it. The liquid would allow their bodies to share what the Volari called essence. It was not physical. It was something deeper. Lyra drank first. Then she handed the chalice to Tejo. He hesitated for only a moment before drinking. The liquid tasted like nothing and everything at once. It was warm going down. Suddenly, Tejo felt something strange. It was like a door opening inside his mind. He could feel Lyra's presence nearby. Not her body, but her feelings. He sensed her loneliness. 300 years of ruling alone. 300 years of watching her people slowly fade. 300 years of hoping someone would come. Tears formed in his eyes without warning. Lyra felt them too. She sensed his fear, but also his kindness. She felt his love for his family back on Earth. She felt his wonder at the universe. She felt his good heart, pure and simple. He is genuine, she whispered in amazement. There is no deception in him. The light around them grew brighter and brighter. It wrapped around them like a cocoon. Tejo felt warmth spread through his entire body. Then, with a flash that left spots in his vision, the light faded. The priests cheered. The ritual was complete. It is done, the head priest announced. The bonding is successful. Compatibility confirmed at the highest level ever recorded. Tejo stood breathing heavily. He felt different somehow, though he could not explain it. Lyra approached him with a gentle smile. Thank you, she said. No matter what happens next, thank you for giving me hope. Tejo nodded. He was still too overwhelmed to speak properly, but he realized something important. He no longer felt like a prisoner. Lyra had not forced him. She had asked. She had explained. She had been honest about her desperation. He returned to the human delegation that afternoon. Yuna nearly tackled him with a hug. Are you okay? She demanded. What happened? Did they hurt you? I'm fine, Tejo said. It was just a ceremony. Nothing scary. Actually, it was kind of beautiful. Yuna stared at him suspiciously. You're acting strange. What are you telling me? Tejo thought about the loneliness he had felt from Lyra. The centuries of isolation. The weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. She's not what I expected, he said quietly. She's not a cold ruler. She's just lonely. Yuna's expression softened. She knew her friend well. He had always been soft-hearted. He once cried because he accidentally stepped on a flower. Just be careful, she warned. We're in an alien world with alien rules. Don't fall too deep. But Tejo wondered if it was already too late for that warning. Something had shifted during the ritual. He could still feel a tiny spark of Lyra's presence in the back of his mind. It was warm and gentle, like a distant star. The days that followed were peaceful. Tejo continued his work as a scientist, studying Valari biology with fascination. But sometimes he would look up and see Lyra watching him from a balcony. She would smile. He would wave awkwardly. Then both would look away, embarrassed. The other humans noticed. They whispered among themselves. The ambassador, now recovered, was confused about how to handle the situation politically. 3 weeks passed in this strange, comfortable routine. Tejo began to think that maybe the bonding ritual was truly just symbolic. A cultural ceremony with no real consequences. Then a messenger arrived at the human quarters with an urgent summons. The queen was calling the entire delegation to the throne room. The messenger's face was serious, but not threatening. "What is this about?" Ambassador Ko asked. The messenger smiled mysteriously. "The queen has an announcement. One that will change everything." Tejo felt a sudden chill run down his spine. That tiny spark of Lyra's presence in his mind pulsed warmly. It felt like excitement. It felt like joy. And somehow, that scared him more than anything else. Yuna grabbed his arm. "Whatever happens," she said, "I've got your back." Together, they walked toward the throne room, unaware that Tejo's life was about to transform forever. The throne room was filled with thousands of Valari. They stood in perfect rows, their glowing skin creating a sea of soft light. Noble lords and ladies occupied the front. Military officers stood at attention along the walls. Priests in silver robes flanked the crystal throne. Tejo walked in with the human delegation. He felt every alien eye turned toward him. Whispers spread through the crowd like wind through grass. He kept his head down and tried to make himself small. Yuna stayed close beside him. "Why are they all staring at you?" she muttered. "I don't know," Tejo whispered back. "I really don't know." A horn sounded. The crowd fell silent instantly. Queen Lyra entered from a side door and walked to her throne. She moved with grace and power. But Tejo noticed something different about her today. There was a glow about her that seemed brighter than usual. Her cheeks had more color. Her eyes sparkled with an emotion he could not name. She sat upon her throne and raised her hand. "My beloved people," she announced, her voice carrying through the massive room. "I have called you here to share news that I have prayed for across 300 years of my reign." The crowd leaned forward. Even the stern-faced generals looked curious. Lyra placed her hand over her stomach. "I am with child." For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the room exploded with noise. Valari cried out in shock and joy. Some fell to their knees. Others embraced each other with tears streaming down their glowing faces. The priest began chanting prayers of thanksgiving. Tejo's legs stopped working. His brain stopped working. His everything stopped working. He stood frozen like a statue while the world went crazy around him. "Child?" he managed to say. "She's pregnant?" Yuna grabbed his shoulders and shook him. "Tejo, did you hear that? She said she's pregnant." The ritual. It wasn't just symbolic. Lyra continued speaking, but Tejo could barely hear her through the ringing in his ears. "The father," she said, "is the human scientist who came to us from Earth. The bonding ritual was successful beyond our greatest hopes. His genetic essence has given life to my womb. The royal bloodline will continue." Now everyone was definitely staring at Tejo. The looks ranged from amazement to gratitude to suspicion to envy. He felt like he might faint. A strong hand grabbed his arm. General Boath, the Queen's military commander, had appeared beside him. The general was a massive Valari with scars on his face and cold eyes. He did not look happy. "Come," the general said flatly. "The Queen wishes to speak with you privately." Tejo was led through the celebrating crowd. Yuna tried to follow, but guards blocked her path. She called out to him, but her voice was lost in the noise. The private chamber behind the throne room was quiet and peaceful. Silk curtains covered the walls. A small fountain bubbled gently in the corner. Lyra was already there, sitting on a cushioned bench. General Borath positioned himself by the door like a statue. "Please sit," Lyra said softly, gesturing to the space beside her. Teho sat. His hands were shaking. I don't understand. You're pregnant? From the ritual? I didn't think... I had no idea that could... Lyra laughed gently. It was a warm sound, like bells. I know. I saw your face out there. You looked like you had seen a ghost. Is it really mine? He asked weakly. Yes, the priest confirmed it. Your human DNA merged perfectly with my essence during the bonding ritual. It should have been impossible. In 4,000 years of our history, no alien species has ever been compatible with Velari biology. She paused and looked at him with wonder. Except you. Except humans. Teho ran his fingers through his hair anxiously. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be the father of an alien princess. Or prince. On a planet millions of light years from home. He laughed nervously. My mother is going to kill me. Lyra reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm and soft. Are you angry with me? He looked at her with surprise. Angry? I did not tell you the ritual could result in conception. I was afraid you would refuse. Her eyes lowered with shame. It was selfish of me. I was so desperate to save my people that I... Hey, Teho said gently. He surprised himself by squeezing her hand back. I'm not angry. I'm terrified. I'm confused. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm not angry. Lyra looked up at him. Tears glistened in her starlight eyes. Truly? You told me your people are dying. You said this might be their only hope. I understand why you did it. He took a deep breath. Besides, I'm a scientist. I always wanted to make a discovery that would change history. I just never thought I'd do it like this. Lyra laughed again, and this time the tension in the room broke. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. In that moment, she did not look like a queen. She looked like a young woman experiencing something amazing for the first time. You are strange, Kang Teho, she said. Most beings would be screaming or demanding things. You make jokes. It's how I deal with panic, he admitted. General Borath cleared his throat loudly. Your Majesty, I must speak. Lyra nodded, becoming serious again. Go ahead, General. Not everyone will celebrate this news, he warned. The conservative factions will see this child as impure. Half-breeds have never existed in our history. Some will call it an abomination. Teho felt cold fear return to his chest. Abomination? The general's eyes were hard. Lord Cath leads the old blood families. They believe our race should remain pure, even if it means extinction. They would rather die than mix with aliens. His jaw tightened. They will oppose this child. Perhaps violently. Lyra stood and suddenly she was every inch a queen again. Her presence filled the room with authority. Then they will face me, she said firmly. This child is the future of our empire. Anyone who threatens it threatens me. Teho stood as well, though his knees felt weak. What should I do? Lyra turned to him with a soft expression. Stay with us. Not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as a partner. Help me raise our child. Help me build a bridge between our peoples. She paused. If you are willing. He thought about Earth, his small apartment, his boring routine, his safe little life. Then he thought about this strange and beautiful world, this brave and lonely queen, this child that was somehow his. I'll stay, he said. I have no idea how to be a father to an alien princess, but I'll try. Lyra's smile was brighter than any star Tahoe had ever seen. But outside the palace, in the shadows of the celebration, Lord Keth gathered his followers. His ancient face was twisted with disgust. His hands curled into fists. "A half-breed heir," he spat. "We will not allow this corruption. The pure bloodline must be protected, no matter the cost." His followers bowed in agreement. Plans began to form. Dark plans. Dangerous plans. The war for Velari's future had begun. The weeks that followed were the busiest of Tahoe's life. He had never imagined he would be studying alien politics. But here he was, spending every night reading ancient texts about Velari law and tradition. Yun helped him whenever she could. She would sneak into his chambers with food and notes from her own research. "You need to understand the power structure," she explained while pointing at charts. "Lord Keth controls about 30% of the noble houses. That's a lot of enemies." "Wonderful," Tahoe muttered. "Just what I needed. 30% of an alien empire wanting me dead." "Not you specifically," Yuna corrected. "The baby. They think a half-human heir will weaken the royal bloodline. They're calling it corruption of sacred genetics." Tahoe rubbed his tired eyes. "That's even worse." Meanwhile, his relationship with Lyra grew deeper. They met every evening in the palace gardens. Sometimes they discussed politics and strategy, but often they just talked about their lives. Lyra told him about her childhood, how she was trained from birth to be queen, how she watched her mother die young from genetic illness, how she had ruled alone for 3 centuries, watching her people slowly fade away. The loneliness in her voice broke Tahoe's heart. In return, he told her about Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the noisy cities full of millions of people living ordinary lives. He told her about his parents who ran a small restaurant, about his little sister who was studying medicine, about his dream of exploring the stars. "Your world sounds chaotic," Lyra said with a smile. "So many people. So much noise. So much life." "It is chaotic," Tahoe agreed. "But that's what makes it beautiful. Nothing on Earth ever stays the same. We're always changing, always growing, always making mistakes and trying again." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is why your genetics are so adaptable. You evolved to embrace change instead of fearing it. Maybe. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to give up." Lyra laughed and placed her hand on her stomach. "I hope our daughter inherits that stubbornness." "Daughter?" Tahoe's eyes widened. "You know it's a girl?" "The priests confirmed it yesterday." "A princess." Lyra's eyes shone with joy. "The first royal child in 400 years. And she is healthy, strong, perfect." Tahoe felt tears forming in his eyes. A daughter. He was going to have a daughter. The reality of it finally hit him like a wave. He sat down heavily on a garden bench. Lyra sat beside him and took his hand. "Are you all right?" "I'm going to be a father," he whispered. "A real father. To a real child." He laughed and cried at the same time. "I used to worry about whether I could take care of a pet fish. Now I'm responsible for a princess." Lyra leaned against his shoulder. "You will be a wonderful father. I can feel your heart, remember? Through our bond. I know how much love you have to give." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the twin moons rise over the crystal towers. For a brief moment, everything felt peaceful. But peace never lasts forever. 3 days later, Lord Keth made his move. He called a meeting of the High Council and formally challenged the legitimacy of the Queen's pregnancy. His words were poison wrapped in polite language. "I mean no disrespect to Her Majesty," he said, his thin lips curved in a false smile. "But our laws are clear. The royal bloodline must remain pure. This half-breed child cannot be recognized as a legitimate heir. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some nobles supported Keth. Others defended the queen. Accusations flew back and forth like weapons. Taiho sat in the observer's gallery with Yuna. He watched Lyra face her enemies with dignity and strength. She argued calmly. She cited ancient precedents. She spoke of survival and adaptation. But Keth was clever. He twisted every word. He turned tradition into a weapon. "This is bad," Yuna whispered. "He's winning over the undecided nobles." The meeting ended without resolution. But the damage was done. Lord Keth had planted seeds of doubt throughout the empire. Protests began in some cities. Pamphlets appeared calling the unborn princess a monster. Dark rumors spread through the population. Taiho threw himself into helping Lyra. He worked with her advisors to counter the propaganda. He made public appearances to show that humans were not monsters. He even gave a speech in Broken Velari about his hope for a united future. Some people were convinced. Many were not. Then came the night that changed everything. Taiho was walking back to his chambers after a late meeting. The hallway was empty and quiet. Moonlight streamed through tall windows. He was so tired that he did not notice the shadows moving behind him. The first sign of danger was a soft footstep. Taiho turned just in time to see 3 figures in black rushing toward him. They carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Assassins. Taiho ran. He was not a fighter. He had never been in a real battle. All he could do was run and scream for help. But the assassins were faster. One of them grabbed his arm and threw him against the wall. Pain exploded through his shoulder. He collapsed to the floor. "Kill him quickly," one assassin hissed. "Before the guards come." A blade rose above Taiho's head. He closed his eyes and thought of his daughter, the child he would never meet. Then he heard a familiar voice cry out in fury, "Nitrogen monoxide." Lyra appeared at the end of the hallway. She raised her hand, and light exploded from her palm. The assassins screamed as pure energy struck them. The one managed to throw his blade before falling. Taiho did not think. His body moved on its own. He threw himself in front of Lyra just as the blade flew toward her. The weapon struck his chest. He felt cold first, then hot, then nothing at all. The last thing he saw was Lyra's face above him, tears falling from her starlight eyes. She was calling his name, but her voice seemed so far away. Then darkness swallowed everything. General Barath found them moments later. The queen was holding the unconscious human in her arms, his blood spreading across the white stone floor. The assassins lay dead around them. "Get the healers," she screamed. "Now, save him." The general had never seen fear in his queen's eyes before. But tonight, he saw it clearly. And he realized something important. This was no longer just politics or genetics. This was love. He ran to fetch the healers, while the queen held her human close and begged the stars to let him live. Taiho floated in darkness. It was warm and peaceful, like being wrapped in a soft blanket. He could hear voices somewhere far away, but they made no sense. Words blended together into meaningless sounds. Sometimes he saw his mother's face. She was smiling and cooking his favorite soup. Sometimes he saw Yuna, laughing at one of his terrible jokes. Sometimes he saw Lyra, her starlight eyes filled with tears. He did not know how long he stayed in the darkness. Time had no meaning there. Then, slowly, light began to return. Sounds became clearer. He felt pain, sharp and real, spreading from his chest through his entire body. Pain meant he was alive. He opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a ceiling made of white crystal. Medical machines hummed softly around him. He was lying in a bed that seemed to be made of clouds. Through a window, he could see the purple sky of the Velari world. "He's awake!" Someone shouted. "Get the queen!" "He's awake!" Moments later, Lyra burst through the door. Her usually perfect appearance was messy. Dark circles hung under her eyes. Her hair was tangled and unwashed. She looked like she had not slept in days. "Taeho." She rushed to his bedside and grabbed his hand. "You're alive. You're alive." I was so scared. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. A servant quickly brought water. After drinking, he managed to form words. "The baby," he whispered. "Is the baby safe?" Lyra burst into tears. "You almost died. Your first words are about the baby." She laughed through her crying. "Yes, she is safe. Because of you. You saved us both." Relief washed over Taeho. He closed his eyes and smiled weakly. "Good, that's good." The healers explained that he had been unconscious for 5 days. The assassin's blade had nearly reached his heart. Only the quick work of Velari medical technology had saved his life. Even so, he would need weeks to fully recover. During those 5 days, the galaxy had changed. Yuna came to visit him that afternoon. She sat beside his bed and told him everything that had happened. When Earth received news of the attack, things went crazy, she said. The United Earth Space Authority called an emergency meeting. Every major nation agreed on the same thing. An attack on you was an attack on all humanity. Taeho blinked in surprise. "What? You're famous now, Taeho. Every news channel on Earth is talking about you. The human who fell in love with an alien queen. The man who threw himself in front of a blade to protect her." Yuna grinned. "My mother called me crying. She said you're a hero." This was too much for Taeho to process. He had never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to study aliens and maybe discover a new species of space fungus. What did Earth do? He asked nervously. They sent a message to the Velari government. A very serious message. Yuna's expression became grave. They said that any further attacks on you would be considered an act of war. And they're sending a fleet to make sure the message is understood. Taeho felt his heart skip. A fleet? They're sending warships? 20 ships. The largest human fleet ever assembled. They should arrive in 2 weeks. This was both terrifying and touching. Earth was coming to protect him. His people, millions of light years away, were mobilizing to keep him safe. He had never felt more connected to his home world than at that moment. Later that day, General Borath came to visit. The stern military commander looked different somehow. His cold eyes had warmed slightly. He bowed his head respectfully when he entered. "I came to apologize," the general said stiffly. "I doubted you when you first arrived. I thought you were weak and soft. A strange creature who did not belong here." He straightened his back. "I was wrong." Taeho was too surprised to respond. "You threw yourself in front of a blade to protect our queen," Barth continued. "You, a scientist with no combat training. No armor, no weapons. You faced death without hesitation." His voice cracked slightly. "In 300 years of service, I have seen warriors with less courage." "I didn't think about it," Taeho admitted. "I just moved." "That is exactly what I mean. Bravery that comes without thinking is the truest kind." The general knelt beside the bed and placed his fist over his heart. "You have my loyalty, human. Not because you are the father of the heir, but because you proved yourself worthy." Taeho had no idea how to respond to this. He awkwardly reached out and patted the general's shoulder. Thank you. Please, stand up. This is very uncomfortable." Morath stood, and for the first time, Taeho saw him smile. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. News of Taeho's survival spread quickly. The Velari people who had doubted him began to change their minds. Stories spread about the brave human who had saved their queen. Songs were written. Paintings were made. Children played games pretending to be the heroic alien from Earth. Lord Keth watched this shift in public opinion with growing anger. His assassination attempt had backfired completely. Instead of eliminating the human threat, he had turned Taiho into a symbol. We must act quickly, Keth told his followers. Before the human fleet arrives. Before the Queen's support grows any stronger. What do you suggest, my lord? Asked one of his generals. Keth's eyes were cold and hard. We have been too careful, too subtle. It is time for open war. Gather our forces. We will take the capital and force the Queen to surrender. Without her, the half-breed child means nothing. His followers bowed and went to prepare. Within days, a rebel fleet began forming in the outer sectors of Valari space. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, all loyal to Lord Keth and his vision of purity. Back at the palace, Taiho recovered slowly. Each day he grew a little stronger. Lyra visited him constantly, bringing news and holding his hand. The rebels are gathering, she told him one evening. Keth has more support than we thought. He's calling it a holy war to preserve the bloodline. What will you do? Taiho asked. Lyra looked out the window at the darkening sky. I will fight. For our people. For our daughter. For our future. She turned to him with fierce determination in her eyes. I have waited 300 years for hope. I will not let one bitter old man take it away. Taiho reached for her hand. I want to help. You're still recovering. I don't care. This is my fight too. Our daughter's fight. He squeezed her fingers tightly. I'm not going to hide in a bed while you risk everything. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, and pride shone in her starlight eyes. You really are stubborn, she said. I told you. It's a human thing. Outside, the twin moons rose over the crystal city. War was coming. But for the first time, Taiho was not afraid. He had something worth fighting for. A family. A home. A future. He would protect them all, or die trying. The rebel fleet appeared in the sky like a swarm of angry stars. 300 ships, each one carrying soldiers who believed they were fighting for a holy cause. Lord Keth stood on the bridge of his command vessel, watching the Valari capital city below. Today we cleanse our race, he announced to his followers. Today we save our people from corruption. The Queen will surrender or she will fall. In the royal palace, alarms screamed through every hallway. Soldiers rushed to their positions. Generals gathered in the command center, studying tactical displays with grim faces. Queen Lyra stood at the center of it all. She wore battle armor now, white and gold, shaped like flowing water frozen in time. A crown of crystal thorns replaced her usual gentle headpiece. She looked every inch a warrior queen. Status report, she commanded. The rebel fleet is in attack formation, General Borath replied. They outnumber us 3-1. Their weapons are charging. What about the planetary shields? Holding, but they won't last long against concentrated fire. Lyra's jaw tightened. The situation was desperate. Her loyal forces were strong, but not strong enough. If the shields fell, the city would be defenseless. That was when Taiho entered the command center. He was still recovering from his wound. His chest ached with every breath. But he walked with determination and took his place beside Lyra. You should be resting, she said firmly. I told you. I'm not hiding. He looked at the tactical display, his scientist mind analyzing the situation. Can you tell me about their ships? How do they work? General Borath frowned. This is not the time for a biology lesson, human. Just answer me, please. The general sighed impatiently. Valari ships are bioorganic. They are grown, not built. Living creatures, essentially, with technological modifications. Why does this matter? Taeho's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. Living creatures? So they have biological systems? Immune responses? Nervous systems? Yes, but I have an idea. Taeho rushed to a console and started pulling up information. His fingers flew across the controls as he accessed a scientific database. During my research, I studied Valari biology extensively. Your species has a unique weakness to certain light frequencies. It causes temporary paralysis. Nothing harmful, just a shutdown of motor functions for a few minutes. Borith leaned closer, suddenly interested. Go on. If the ships are bioorganic, they should have the same weakness. We can generate a pulse of that specific light frequency, broadcast it across the entire rebel fleet. Taeho looked up with hope in his eyes. It won't destroy them. It will just freeze them. Disable them without killing anyone. The room fell silent. Valari warfare was brutal. It always had been. The concept of defeating an enemy without bloodshed was almost foreign. Lyra stepped forward. Can it work? Theoretically, yes. But we'd need to modify our broadcast systems to generate the right frequency. And the pulse would need to be massive. It would drain our entire power grid. Which means the shields would fall, Borith added grimly. We would be defenseless if it doesn't work. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Risk everything on an untested plan from a wounded human scientist. Or fight a conventional battle they would almost certainly lose. Lyra made her choice. Do it. Engineers worked frantically to modify the systems. Taeho supervised everything, explaining the science and double-checking calculations. His wound screamed in protest, but he ignored it. There was no time for pain. The rebel fleet began their attack. Energy beams struck the planetary shields. The whole city trembled. Buildings cracked. People screamed. Shields at 60%. An officer shouted. We need more time. Taeho yelled back. We don't have time. Lyra placed her hand on Taeho's shoulder. Trust yourself. You can do this. He nodded and focused harder. The equations swam in his vision. The pain in his chest threatened to pull him under. But he pushed through. Shields at 30%. Almost there, almost. Shields at 10%. They're failing. Now. Taeho slammed his hand on the activation switch. A wave of light erupted from the capital city. It was not visible to human eyes, but Taeho knew it was there. It spread outward at incredible speed, washing over the rebel fleet like an invisible tsunami. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the rebel ships stopped moving. Their weapons went dark. Their engines died. They hung in space like frozen insects trapped in amber. The command center erupted in disbelief. It worked, Borith breathed. By the stars, it actually worked. Lyra laughed with relief. Tears streamed down her face. She grabbed Taeho and pulled him into a tight embrace. You did it, she whispered. You wonderful, brilliant, stubborn human. You did it. Loyal forces moved quickly. They surrounded the disabled rebel ships and captured them one by one. Lord Keth was dragged from his command vessel in chains, screaming about betrayal and corruption. His followers surrendered when they saw their leader taken. The battle for Valari was over, and not a single life had been lost. News of the victory spread across the empire like wildfire. People celebrated in the streets. They chanted Taeho's name alongside their queens, the human who saved them without violence, the scientist who found another way. But the celebration was interrupted by urgent news from the medical wing. The queen had collapsed. Taeho ran through the palace, ignoring the pain in his chest, ignoring everything except reaching Lyra. He found her in the royal medical chamber, lying on a bed surrounded by worried healers. What happened? He demanded. The head healer looked at him with serious eyes. The stress of battle has triggered early labor. The baby is coming. Now? But it's too soon. She's not due for 3 more months. I know. The healer's voice was grave. We are doing everything we can. But you should prepare yourself, human. Premature births are extremely dangerous for Valari children. Tejo fell to his knees beside Lyra's bed. She was conscious but in pain. Sweat covered her glowing skin. But when she saw him, she managed a weak smile. We won, she whispered. Yes, we won. He took her hand and held it tightly. Now you need to win too. You and our daughter. You need to fight. Lyra nodded. I've never stopped fighting. The healers worked through the night. Tejo stayed by Lyra's side, never letting go of her hand. He talked to her constantly. He told her about the home he would build for them, the places on Earth he would show her, the games he would play with their daughter. Hours passed. The twin moons rose and set. And finally, as the first light of dawn touched the crystal towers, a new sound filled the room, the cry of a baby. Tejo held his breath as the healers carefully cleaned the tiny creature and wrapped her in soft cloth. Then they placed her in his trembling arms. She was so small, so delicate. Her skin glowed softly like her mother's. But her eyes, when she opened them, were dark and human like his. Hello, little one, he whispered, tears flowing freely down his face. I'm your father, and I promise I will always protect you. Lyra, exhausted but alive, reached out to touch her daughter's tiny hand. She's beautiful. She's perfect. For the first time in 400 years, the royal bloodline had an heir. And for the first time in his life, Tejo understood what true happiness felt like. The naming ceremony took place 3 days after the birth. The entire empire watched through broadcast screens as the tiny princess was officially welcomed into the royal family. Thousands of Valari gathered in the capital square. Dignitaries came from every corner of the galaxy dot, and for the first time in history, a human fleet hovered peacefully in orbit. 20 Earth ships, sent to protect one man, now witnessed the birth of a new era. Queen Lyra stood on the palace balcony, holding her daughter. Beside her stood Tejo, dressed in formal Valari robes of deep blue and silver. He looked nervous but proud. His hands kept fidgeting at his sides. Stop moving, Yuna whispered from behind him. Everyone's watching. I can't help it, he whispered back. There are literally millions of people staring at me right now. Lyra began the ancient naming ceremony. She spoke words in the old tongue that had been used for thousands of years. She called upon the ancestors. She asked the stars for blessings. The crowd watched in respectful silence. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. I named this child Hana, Lyra announced, her voice carrying across the square. In the language of her father, it means one. She is one child born of 2 worlds. One hope for 2 peoples. One future for us all. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of joy that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. Fireworks exploded in the purple sky. Music began to play from every direction. Tejo looked at his daughter in Lyra's arms. Little Hana was sleeping peacefully, unaware that she was now the most famous baby in the galaxy. Her tiny face was calm and beautiful. Her skin glowed with soft light. Her dark eyes, when open, held the depth of the universe. She doesn't even know, he murmured. She doesn't know how special she is. Lyra smiled warmly. She will learn. We will teach her. Together. The celebration lasted for 7 days. There was feasting and dancing in every city across the empire. Old enemies became friends. Ancient divisions began to heal. The birth of a hybrid princess had done something that war could never accomplish. It had given people hope. Lord Keth and his followers faced trial for their rebellion. Many expected harsh punishment. Execution was the traditional sentence for treason. But Lyra chose a different path. Death creates martyrs, she explained to her council. I will not give the pure blood movement a hero to rally around. Instead, Keth was exiled to a distant moon. His noble titles were stripped away. His wealth was distributed to the families who had suffered during the rebellion. He would live out his remaining years alone, forgotten by history. Some called the Queen weak for showing mercy, but most saw wisdom in her decision. The old ways of violence and revenge had nearly destroyed their civilization. Perhaps it was time to try something new. The human fleet departed after the naming ceremony, but they left behind something more valuable than warships. They left ambassadors, scientists, artists, and teachers. Earth and the Valari Empire signed the first ever interspecies alliance. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchanges began. The galaxy became a little smaller and a lot more connected. Teho's parents came to visit 6 months later. They traveled on a diplomatic vessel, nervous and excited and completely overwhelmed. His mother cried when she saw him. "My son," she sobbed while hugging him tightly. "My baby, you look so thin. Are they feeding you properly?" "Mom, I'm fine," Teho laughed. "I'm eating well. The food here is amazing." His father was more quiet, more cautious. He looked around the crystal palace with suspicious eyes. But when Teho placed little Hana in his arms, the old man's expression melted into pure love. "She has your eyes," his father whispered. "My granddaughter has our family's eyes." Lyra watched the reunion from a respectful distance. She had been nervous about meeting Teho's parents. What if they hated her? What if they blamed her for taking their son away from Earth? But Teho's mother approached her with open arms. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for making my son happy. Thank you for giving us this beautiful grandchild." Lyra hugged her back, surprised by the warmth. "Thank you for raising such a good man. He saved my people. He saved me." The two mothers stood together, watching Teho and his father play with Hana. Different species. Different worlds. Same love. As the months passed, Teho found his place in this new life. He was officially named Royal Consort, but he refused to spend his days in luxury. He returned to his work as a scientist, leading a new research team dedicated to studying human Valari compatibility. If he and Lyra could have a healthy child, perhaps others could too. His research brought hope to thousands of Valari who had given up on having families. The genetic stagnation that had plagued their species for millennia finally had a solution. Human DNA was the key to their survival, and more Valari began seeking human partners. Una stayed too, eventually becoming the chief communications officer for the Alliance. She fell in love with a Valari artist named Sarah and decided to make this strange world her home. "I blame you for this," she told Teho one evening while they watched the sunset from a garden balcony. "I was supposed to have a boring career translating diplomatic messages. Now I'm living on an alien planet and dating someone who literally glows in the dark." "You're welcome," Teho replied with a grin. Little Hana grew quickly. By her first birthday, she was already walking and making sounds that almost resembled words. She had inherited her mother's grace and her father's curiosity. She loved exploring the palace gardens and putting random objects in her mouth. On the night of her birthday celebration, Teho stood alone on the palace balcony. The party was winding down. Guests were leaving. Servants were cleaning. Lyra had taken Hana to bed after the little princess fell asleep in her chair. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, impossibly far away, was Earth, his first home. The place where he had grown up dreaming of space and aliens and adventure. "I never imagined any of this," he said softly to himself. "I was just a scientist who wanted to study alien biology. I never wanted to be important. Footsteps approached behind him. Lyra appeared at his side, her white dress flowing like moonlight. She followed his gaze to the stars. Having regrets? She asked gently. No, never. He turned to look at her. I'm just amazed. One translation mistake. One stupid error. And it led to all of this? A wife, a daughter, an alliance between species. The survival of your entire people. He laughed softly. If I had said the right word that day, none of this would have happened. Lyra took his hand. Maybe it was fate. Maybe the universe wanted us to find each other. Do you believe that? I believe in you. She leaned against him, her glowing skin warm and soft. I spent 300 years alone, waiting for hope. Then you stumbled into my life by accident, nervous and awkward and wonderful. And everything changed. Taeho wrapped his arm around her. I didn't mean to get you pregnant, you know? Lyra laughed. I know, but I'm glad I did. I am too. They stood together, watching the stars wheel overhead. Two beings from different worlds. Two hearts beating as one. Behind them, in a crystal crib, their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming of adventures yet to come. I love you, Taeho whispered. I love you too, Lyra replied. My strange, brave, beautiful human. The twin moons rose higher. The night grew quiet. And somewhere in the universe, a new chapter was beginning. A story of two species learning to live together. A story of love conquering fear. A story that started with a mistake and ended with a miracle. God, this was only the beginning. The end.